So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Faerie Fable Librarians. I'm Simona.
I'm Katie.
And today, Katie and I are going to be talking about the Netflix fantasy film, The School for Good and Evil, that was released on October 19th of this year. The School for Good and Evil is based on the juvenile fantasy series written by Soman Chainani. And I think it's 8 books in
It's
total.
8 books. Mm-hmm.
And the 8th and final one came out this year. The film, so we're going to be, I did read the first book, but I forgot a lot, so I'm going to primarily focus on the movie. So there will be spoilers and some spoilers for the first book, so just to make you aware of that.
So if you don't want to watch this video, wait until you've actually watched the movie or read the book before watching.
And I also wanted to let everyone know that we have the books within our collection, and we also have the audiobooks available on Hoopla. So if you're interested, you can call us and we'll talk to you about Hoopla, help you download it, and you can listen to the books. I listened to the first one. I started the second one. The narrator is really good. She does a good job.
That's always a plus.
Yes. So when the film opens up, we are given a scene of these twin brothers, identical twin brothers, who are having this playful duel of sorts. And the two brothers are Rian and Rafal. And at first, the duel starts off, it's intense, but it's playful. And then Rafal decides, let's make this more intense. And it does get more intense, but then it quickly sort of devolves into Rafal trying to murder Rian. And what you learn is that these two brothers are the original founders of the School for Good and Evil. And Rafal is tired of playing by the rules, and he's tired of evil giving way to good. And there's this scuffle. Both of the brothers, or at least one of the brothers, falls off the cliff, and that's sort of how that ends. And then we're brought to present day, and we are in the town of Gavaldon, where best friends Sophie and Agatha live. Agatha is a bit of a social outcast because her mom is a witch, but she's a good witch. She makes healing herbs for the townsfolk, but still the townsfolk sort of treat them as outcasts. They live near the cemetery. Sophie lives with her father and her stepmother, and she isn't too happy with her life. She sort of dreams of something better.
Well, that's quintessential Cinderella.
Yeah, so she's not a very happy person. She believes that she's meant for more. And we get a scene where Sophie and Agatha visit the local bookshop, and there's a new fantasy book that has, fairy tale book that has come out. And the bookseller makes it a point to show the little stamp, or lack of better word, I'm sure there's a better term for that, which shows the insignia of the School for Good and Evil, which is 2 swans. On the book cover, one swan is black and one swan is white. In the film, they didn't really do that, but at least that's what it looks like in the book. And the bookseller says, oh, this is the latest story. It's, and look at the stamp, aren't you intrigued? And Sophie is intrigued, Agatha not really. And for many within Gavaldon, although this is not really clear in the film, but this is clear in the books, so this is kind of where the film differs from the book, where in Gavaldon, they're aware of the School of Good and Evil because every time a new fairy tale is written, it comes from this organization. Now, a lot of people don't know too much about the School for Good and Evil, but throughout the years, one boy and one girl, which is not explained in the film, but in the books, 2 children are chosen, always a boy and always a girl. I don't think it's ever 2 girls or 2 boys, but if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. And they get whisked away, never to be seen again. So a lot of townsfolk, particularly if they have a very beautiful daughter or handsome son, they try to uglify them. They do everything to try to avoid them being taken, but if the school wants you, it will get you. And
That sounds terrifying.
I know. And in the books, Sophie very much wants to be taken. Like, when the book opens up, she's giving herself a facial, and she desperately wants to be taken. And in the film, it's the same thing, where Sophie believes that she's destined for something greater, and she literally writes a note and begs to be taken. Agatha, on the other hand, and this is consistent with her characterization in the book, is very happy with her life. She's happy with her mother, happy with Sophie. She doesn't have any plans to, like, do something greater. She's very content. And she basically asks Sophie, promise me that you're not going to go, you're not going to wish to be taken, and if they do try to take you, that you'll fight. And Sophie goes, of course. And then, of course, the same night, she snuck out, she's headed into the woods, Agatha catches her, and, you know, she's upset that Sophie has lied, and all of a sudden, like, they hear a noise, and Sophie gets really excited, and you see this, like, shadowy figure with fire for eyes, like, race towards Sophie and grab her. And Agatha says, not today. And she, like, runs after Sophie and clutches onto her legs. And the figure drops her. And Sophie's like, why did you do it? Because she really wants to be taken.
Clearly. I mean, watching it, it's like, I don't know. And I probably have to watch the movie again. I felt very ambivalent about it. And, I mean, I can kind of sort of understand where people would compare the movie to Hogwarts, to like Harry Potter, because of the magical school element with it. But I really don't think it's like a Harry Potter knockoff, like what we were talking about in like our pre-show meeting.
Yeah.
It's definitely something on its own. But I mean, like, the reason why I was probably ambivalent towards it all was because I've seen where I feel like it's been done before, kind of a thing, where I've seen where fairy tale tropes are taken and either made fun of or changed to certain extents, like and this may be calling out my age or just how I grew up. I used to watch a lot of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yes.
Which is it's a cartoon. Very funny cartoon. You should watch it if you're interested. They would have shorts called Fractured Fairy Tales. Oh, okay. And they would take fairy tales and essentially turn what, like, again, it's been so long since I've seen them, but like the best way to describe it is like, say they were doing Rapunzel. And, you know, the father goes into the garden and takes a rampion and promises, you know, the evil witch to give her his firstborn so that he doesn't get cursed. So the witch takes the little girl, brings her up into the tower. When the prince comes, instead of like saving her, if I'm not confusing when they did Sleeping Beauty, he essentially makes her into an attraction. Oh. And sells tickets for amusement to see this trapped girl in a tower. And I'm probably, I feel like I'm confusing it with their Sleeping Beauty Fractured Fairy Tales. But you can also find them on YouTube. They're very, very funny. And I've seen like other shows where, so like for a little bit I was watching Ever After High, which is an animated cartoon series on Netflix, and it has all of the like fairy tale characters who are going to high school. And again, it's like taking the tropes of the fairy tales and turning them around to being something different or making fun of them or, you know, something. So honestly, it wasn't something that I haven't seen before. So, I mean, I didn't feel like it was necessarily a fresh take on it, but I feel like I should probably watch it again.
And I would also say read at least the first book.
Right.
Because what I will say is that I believe that this shouldn't have been a movie.
Yeah.
I think it would have done more justice to the material had they made it into a mini-series.
And we've talked about that before.
Yes,
and after seeing the movie, I honestly agree. Like, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Because I feel like the movie also suffered from pacing.
Yeah, a lot was left unexplored. So So I'm going to talk a little bit about the book, and I was reminded a lot of this when I looked at this article that details the differences between the film and the books. So one difference that stands out to me is that, so in the original story, Sophie and Agatha are both white, or at least assumed white. They're default white. And for lack of a better term.
For lack of a better term, yeah.
And the author is an author of color. But that decision to make both characters white is because he's dealing primarily with Western fairy tales or European fairy tales. Yeah. I don't really think, I haven't read the other books, maybe the other books go into different fairy tales, but for the most part, from what the author has said, he wanted to bring the fairy tales back to their darker roots. So Agatha and Sophie are white girls. Sophie is the stereotypical image of a princess. She has blonde hair, she's beautiful. Agatha, while she may believe herself to be ugly, I don't think she's supposed to be ugly, but she's not as attractive. She has lanky black hair. She looks like a stereotypical witch, which is why when I saw the actress, and the actress who plays Agatha does a terrific job. I am not discrediting the actress.
We're not criticizing the actress. Yeah. What we're doing is criticizing the direction in which the movie was written. And
some of Sophia Wiley, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, she is the actress who plays Agatha, and she is a terrific actress. She sold me on her role. But for me, the descriptions of the characters were very intentional. Mm-hmm. Because the author is playing with these tropes, it didn't really make sense, hopefully I'm not misunderstood, with the casting choice. And also looking at the character of Agatha in the film, I don't really understand why she's an outcast. Other than the fact that she wears men's clothing, it doesn't fit. So the casting choice, I think, wasn't ideal, because it's very intentional in the books.
Right. But looking at the character of Agatha, I almost said Sophie, of Agatha, what the movie is saying to me is because she's a tomboy and she wears clothing that would stereotypically be for boys, she's an outcast because of that. So what you're saying is that if a girl is a tomboy, then she's automatically an outcast?
Yeah, like I said, because I want to reemphasize, because I know there's been a lot of controversy with changing the race of characters, so I don't want to be misunderstood. The actress is terrific. She did a good job in the role. I
agree with that as well.
But with the book, the appearance is heavily described and is intentional. So when you sort of divert from that, certain things don't make sense. And, and both girls are very pretty. Yeah. And other people have commented, why is she an outcast? They're both very pretty. Yeah. Even some of the comments that people will make no sense. One character will hey, hair. As a reference, I guess, to Sophie's blonde hair or whatever. So it's I'm trying to see, okay, well, how are they outcasts? I don't know. Maybe if they would have made more of an attempt to make Agatha look a little bit more ugly, maybe it would have been believable. But aside from that,
or even just have the fact that she's show that the fact that her mom is a witch,
which is touched upon briefly in the film,
and that people don't trust witches because of this school. Yeah. Is it because of the school?
I think it might be because of the school, and he's also playing, I think, upon the thing about witches being evil. I think it may have to do with the school.
It's okay, this is when M. Night Shyamalan did the movie for Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was awful. I hated it, and I'm a huge fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the anime, and it's he made the movie for people who weren't fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah. Which was a complete... I don't know why he decided to do that. I don't know why he wouldn't make a movie that was for the fans. Because Avatar: The Last Airbender has a huge fan base. Yeah. When I saw this movie... where I liked certain characters, but I didn't have emotional investment in the characters.
Because you're not given time to get any emotional investment in any of them.
Right. And the only in regards to Agatha being an outcast, I would assume in the book, because I haven't read the book, that the reason why she's an outcast is because she's a witch. That her mom's a witch.
Yeah. And also she has she does very stereotypical like she loves hanging out in the cemetery. She has a pet cat. I think she also has a pet rat. It's like I said, in the book, the characterization, the appearance is central to these two characters.
Right.
And the trajectory they sort of have assumed in their life.
Yeah.
And how they subvert those tropes.
Right. And I guess what my long-winded point was that this movie almost seemed to be made for those who knew the book, where there's already an assumed amount of knowledge on the characters, on the world as a whole, which I think is ultimately a mistake, because I think the majority of people who are going to watch the movie have no idea that it's based on a book. You know what I mean? Or have read the book or listened to the book.
It is possible. And I know that this sort of I'm having a hard time talking today. This project sort of languished for a few years before it was accepted and given the go.
Yeah.
And also going back, there were a lot of the negative reviews that I read were comparing this to Harry Potter. And
which I don't think is fair.
I honestly think it's sort of like with Tolkien, where the minute he wrote an epic fantasy, every other epic fantasy henceforth is always compared to Tolkien.
Right.
With Rowling, she wrote a magical school, so now she sort of has the copyright on Magical Institute, and no one can write a magic. Which, if you've read the book, there is no comparison to Harry Potter. The only thing they share is a magical school.
Right.
That is where the comparison. So I found it funny that they were making those comparisons when they're two really separate stories. There's really no way to compare the two.
Right. Especially since one is dealing with fairy tale tropes.
Yeah.
And another one is just dealing with one boy who survived an attack on a deranged
but I'm sorry, where you were going to?
I was just going to ask, do you know when School for Good and Evil was written?
Oh, this was definitely written a few years, because J.K. Rowling wrote the first book in Britain. I think it came out in 96. I know in the U.S. it was 97. I think this first one was written in 2007. So yeah. But like I said, if you read the two, they're not comparable.
Yeah.
And one of the things, the importance of Sophie and Agatha. So in the film, Sophie and Agatha, they're taken by this skeletal bird. And just as they're reaching the school, Sophie assumes, I'm going to the good school. But she gets dropped in the school for evil. Agatha gets dropped in the school for good. And both of them, as in the books, are shocked at their placement. Agatha sincerely believes, I don't belong here. And Sophie, of course, sincerely believes she's been misplaced.
Sophie annoyed the hell out of me.
And they played down her character a lot. They made her more tolerable in the film. In the book, Sophie is very self-centered, self-absorbed, and she has an affectation of goodness. And I forgot this, but one of the reasons why she even befriends Agatha is because it's a good deed that she's performing. Because she believes, I'm doing an act of service, and look how good I am. And that's why she befriends Agatha.
Wow, I already don't like her.
Yeah, and Agatha is truly a friend in that, and it was also the point where I wanted to shake Agatha and saying, stop it, wake up, she doesn't deserve you.
Yeah.
Agatha does so much for Sophie, so I can't talk, in the books. So when Sophie gets to her school, even the way she's perceived by her classmates, and again, it's because of the way Sophie looks. Sophie has the stereotypical princess look.
Yeah.
So she meets this girl, Hester, and unfortunately I can't remember the other girls' names. And they look at her like, what is a princess doing here? We should kill her. Her roommates want to kill her the first night she gets there. It's kind of funny. And what you learn is that her classmates are descendants or direct family members of famous fairy tale characters. Like the character of, was his name Wart or Hort? The guy that immediately wants to touch Sophie's hair, says, I bet it smells like cake. I think his name is Hort. You find out that he is the son of the sheriff of Nottingham.
That's cool.
One of the girls that, so a few of the roommates, like I think like one of the girls who in the film you see her eating chocolate, she can turn things into chocolate too. I think she's the daughter or granddaughter of the witch who tried to kill Hansel and Gretel.
See, now that aspect of the movie I really like.
Yeah.
Because it's like that whole, like, what if they did have kids? And then we're seeing
and that's part of her special talent. And the character's adorable because she's eating chocolate. It's all smeared over her face, and she can turn something into chocolate. And that's, like, her gift.
Yeah, yeah.
That she tries to impress the teachers. The teachers are terribly impressed because in the books you're supposed to, like, everyone who's wicked is supposed to develop their talent, which is supposed to basically, if they become... Because essentially in the school... You either are going to become a prince, a princess, or you're going to become the lackeys or the servants of the prince and princess.
Yeah.
The same thing with the villains. You're either going to become a villain in your own story, or you're going to become the agent of the villain.
Okay.
So, like in the case of Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf may have been a kid who failed to be a villain. Like, and this is part of the darker aspect of the schools, which is barely touched upon in the film, but in the books it's a serious deal, which is what makes Agatha realize something is not right with either institution. Like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
So, like, you learn that the gargoyles who protect the school and prevent kids from crossing over were former students who failed at being villains. They were transformed into gargoyles.
Interesting.
Students in the School of Good who failed, like one student, she's been the wish fish for hundreds of years because she failed to be a princess. So they made her, and the whole idea is, well, they're serving the greater good. And Agatha realizes, no, there's no such thing as someone who's strictly good or strictly evil. People are more nuanced. And she sort of also...
It's always gray.
Yeah, and Agatha in the movie says that to one of her teachers, Professor Dovey, like, no one is purely good or purely evil, and trying to categorize people as such is wrong.
Yeah.
So in the books, Sophie does not attempt to do her lessons. Like, one is uglification, which is the funniest scene in the movie and in the book, where you have to have warts grow your face, and Sophie, who's so vain... The very thought makes her want to die, and I think one of the classmates actually dunks her head in the bowl, and she comes out covered in warts, and for her it's the worst thing in the world.
Oh my God.
And you actually learn it's Agatha who's helping her get through her lessons. Agatha's essentially doing the work for Sophie and her own work, and that's how Sophie is getting to do what she does.
That is true.
Yeah.
I don't remember how.
Because it's not discussed in the films.
See now, it's... This is why I'm ambivalent to this movie, because
a lot of that characterization that's important is rushed, and that's why I feel had this been a miniseries, this could have been explored. Even Agatha's relationship with Tedros, whom you learn is the son of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere. And even he is very one-dimensional in the film. I mean, when you're first introduced, he's the golden boy.
Right.
He is the popular boy among the boys.
If I haven't read the books, but I can kind of guess that he'll end up with Agatha because he'll subvert the trope of being the golden boy.
Probably, yeah. And you learn that he is the apple of every girl's eyes and one boy's eyes in particular. It's a very funny scene in the book, but I'll save that for when you read it.
Or listen to it.
Yeah, and he has these very grand expectations of himself and also placed upon him, and you learn some darker aspects of his family story as well.
Well, the fact that Guinevere cheated on King Arthur with Lancelot.
Yeah, but that's part of the dark aspect,
Yeah.
and how that impacts how he views, how he finds the woman he should marry.
Yeah.
And also the expectations his father has placed on him. And essentially, he's like, think of him as the valedictorian of the school, or like the head boy, or, you know, it's like everyone loves him except for Agatha. She thinks he's an arrogant toenail. And she tells him as much. Like in the book, she doesn't mince her words. She wants nothing to do with him. She can't understand why he's so special.
Until later in the book series where things change.
Yeah. Sophie, of course, because he's the most handsome, the most prince-like, and she is the most beautiful, that is the one she's supposed to be with. And she makes it her life goal to make him hers. And that's touched upon in the film, but not given much development.
See, I have so many issues with this movie because all the dark elements that you're dark in parentheses or quotations are essential to knowing the characters that you're trying to portray in film. But when you don't explain that or show it or exhibition it in any way, it takes away from the movie, from the characters, and then it's like, oh, so I have to root for this character because of this aspect, but not because of this aspect. It doesn't make any sense why they would choose to ignore that aspect of the book.
Yeah, and even when you meet the girls who eventually become Sophie's friends, and they too eventually, when they realize that Sophie is going down a particular path, try to intervene.
Yeah.
Even they are sort of living based on the expectations of their own lineage and their parents.
Yeah.
So, like, there's one girl, you saw her in the film where her tattoo becomes a living creature and she can manipulate it.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, she's the daughter of, I thought it was the Hansel witch, but, like, if I recall in the book, the daughter or the girl who's related directly to the witch in Hansel and Gretel, I think is the one that can turn things into chocolate.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Unless I'm mistaken, I thought...
Well, I mean, that would make sense because the witch in Hansel and Gretel lives in a gingerbread house.
Yeah, so I think Hester is supposed to be the daughter of another famous witch. I just can't recall which one it is.
Yeah.
And all those girls...
It's probably explained in the book.
It is. It's definitely because they give their pedigree. And what's also kind of touched upon but not fully explained is Sophie and Agatha are referred to as readers. So readers are essentially... Think of us, we would be the readers. We are the ones that consume the fairy tales, but we are not the ones that the fairy tales are talking about. And if we wanted to use the Harry Potter metaphor, think of Agatha and Sophie as Muggle-born witches, and they have, like, the pure-blooded ones, so, like, the people that know about the school, because every other character knows about this school. Like, when Sophie and Agatha are brought to school, like, they have no clue what the school is about.
Seamus Finnegan, when they first come to the school and the camera is moving down the table, the Gryffindor table, and you see Seamus Finnegan going... Me dad's a muggle, mom's a witch.
Yes.
Bit of a nasty shock when he found out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that in the perspective of students.
Because in the books, the whole school, the whole thing about fairy tales, like, it's supposed to be, I don't know if it's every year a book or copies of books magically appear in the bookstore.
Yeah.
But no one knows the true origins. So for most of the student body, they are aware of the school because their families are these epic fairy tale characters.
It's like legacy.
Yeah, so they know this is their world.
Yeah.
So, like, this is their dream to become the best villain. And also for centuries, good has been winning against evil. And there's supposed to be a balance. Mm-hmm. And the balance has been tipped in the favor of good.
Right.
So a lot of these girls and boys from the School of Evil also have a vested interest in bringing that balance back, So they also have the expectation of their birth.
Yeah.
And what you learn is that, like, even the character, I want to call him Wart, but I feel like his name is Hort. He's the boy that the minute he sees Sophie, he develops a huge crush on her.
Oh.
When you even see him, think about it. My father's Sheriff of Nottingham, but he's a softie. He's adorable. Even he cannot really do anything right.
No,
like,
it's
the scene
true.
where he grows one chest hair. It's even funnier in the book because that's supposed to be his talent.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, he's straining and, like, two pop out of his chest, and the teacher's, like, not even impressed by him.
Oh.
But he gives, like, Goo eyes at Sophie, hoping that she's impressed, and of course she's like, nope, you smell, and your hygiene is bad, you need... So it's really funny. But all of these characters are nuanced and layered. They're not all purely good, they're not all purely evil.
Yeah.
And the schools essentially are trying to force their students into fitting these roles without consideration for, well, is this the right thing to do? So like for the School of Good, every girl dreams of being a princess, and she has to cultivate her princess skills, which are like singing well, summoning animals, being pretty, fainting when expected to, not fighting because princesses don't fight. Princes have to be chivalrous, and they got to learn swordplay and archery. They got to present roses and learn how to woo girls and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Which when I was listening to the books, I was like, that's not fair. Girls should also do swordplay as well. But like again, and I think some people were criticizing the books as promoting these ideals, and they missed the point. The author is not promoting this.
Yeah.
He's talking about how there's something wrong with it. So for people who's saying that you're missing the point of his book.
You tell them.
Yes, because they are. Like, if you've read the book, you'll know that's not what Chainani is saying. He wants to subvert these tropes. And going back to the movie, so eventually, and this is where the books differ, and I haven't read all the books, so I wasn't aware of this, but Rafal, spoiler, you learn that, and in the first book, you do learn this, that the headmaster is not who he claims to be, that he's actually the evil brother. So, like, in the film, you see the battle, and then when Rafal is telling his story to Sophie, whom he is manipulating behind the scenes, that, my brother and I fought, and you see that Rafal was the one that actually survived. He stabbed his brother and assumed his identity. And his whole idea is to topple the balance in the favor of evil. And he wants Sophie in order to accomplish this goal. So Sophie and Rafal share true love's kiss after Sophie basically has sort of succumbed to her darker impulses under his influence. They share true love's kiss. The school for good and evil start to crumble. Everyone is endangered. Agatha comes, just giving the Cliff Notes version. She and Sophie defeat Rafal. Sophie almost dies, but Agatha gives her true love's kiss. Her tears heal Sophie's wounds. The school is all happy. Sophie and Agatha basically are granted a request, like any wish that you wanted, we would like to return home. Sophie and Agatha return home. And the ending is a big cliffhanger because you see a portal open up and you hear Tedros' voice saying, Agatha, something to the effect, I'm coming back for you. He throws a sword. And then you see a knife, which looks like Rafal's knife, pierce through the sword of Tedros. And then the film ends. So I think they're opening up for a sequel. Now, that was the Cliff Notes version. And I got to sip my water. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're fine. I don't think this deserves a sequel because they didn't do a good job the first time.
They didn't. And it's because a lot has been rushed.
Yeah.
So my thoughts are, like, and I'm probably going to read a little bit of it. So as I said, I would have preferred if this would have been a miniseries and not a film. I believe that there was a lot left undeveloped, particularly Sophie's motivations regarding her friendship with Agatha, as well as her developing friendship with a few of the other girls in the School of Evil, which you barely see. And also what I didn't appreciate was that in the film, they basically state that Rafal is manipulating Sophie, and that is why she is displaying these dark tendencies. That's not true. In the book, Sophie has these dark tendencies. I don't believe that she's pure evil, but it's not a stretch to see why she ends up becoming the character that she becomes. Because even her good deeds are motivated out of selfishness. She's not doing these things.
No, she's definitely selfish. She's vain.
Because she's good. She's not, in that sense.
Right. Well, like as you said, her goodness is out of affectation.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this because I am good, and everyone will see that I am good, and
she genuinely believes it.
Right.
Like, Sophie genuinely is convinced that she's good. She doesn't understand that, like, at one point she says, because Tedros doesn't want anything to do with her since she's part of the School of Evil, and obviously she's a witch. And so she basically starts offering these Beauty 101 classes. And it's so funny where she has meetings and she says, everyone can be their best. use cucumbers on the eyes and slather this lotion on your face. Just because you're evil doesn't mean you have to look evil. And the funny thing is that her classes have high attendance.
Yeah.
Like, boys and girls for the School of Evil want to be beautiful too, and they're ashamed of it, but they want to be. So she does all these things, and she's shocked when no one is impressed or that she's not brought over to the other school.
Right.
So these are all like, she's not doing it out of a true desire for good. She's doing it because she believes, well, you know, this is what I'm supposed to do, and everyone will recognize how good I am. So I didn't appreciate that in the film. They made her manipulated by someone.
Right.
She's not manipulated. It's her own culpability.
Right.
There's even a very dark scene, and in the film, they made Professor Lesso, which I liked, Lady Lesso. I think she's a really cool character. She brings her to the Doom Room, which in the book is a truly terrifying sequence, because she's dragged down there by wolves. Lady Lesso doesn't take her. The wolves chain her to a chair, and you see the torturer wolf, or like the Inquisitor wolf, comes in, and he chops off her hair, and he does a few other things to her in the book. Yeah, and it's to Sophie. And Sophie, it's almost like a mental switch is turned on, and she kills the wolf. Like,
oh, wow.
She, and it basically, like, in the book, you see it's almost like the switch snaps back, and she like, strains herself out, and she walks out of the Doom Room, and in the book it says how they couldn't find that wolf, like, he must have disappeared. She killed him. And that's when I think she also starts to have more mental switches, where more of her darker nature starts to come out.
Yeah.
But it's not that she's being driven to it. That's a part of her nature. She can be good, but she can also be evil.
Right.
So that's better in the book. In the film, not so much. And also, they don't really show how much Agatha truly does for Sophie, how much she assists Sophie, how much she gives so much of herself with little gratitude or any kind of reward. And also Sophie's self-centered behavior is underplayed tremendously in the film. In the book, she's insufferable. I could not stand her. The horrific abusive nature of both schools is briefly touched upon, but not really given the attention it deserves.
Yeah.
Because you learn that both schools, their punishments for students who they deem to be failures is horrific. You're either turned into a gargoyle, you can be turned into a bat, you can be the wish fish who are serving other people. Like, there's a scene where Agatha goes in the school and she's seeing all the portraits of, I think, like, students who failed, and like, you could be like the axe that the woodcutter uses to, like, or, you know, you can be the wolf, or you're the henchman. You basically,
I think we
get
can.
The short stick.
Yeah. I think we can. I think between the two of us, we can agree that the books are so much better than the adapted movie that it was turned into. So, if you our viewers are interested, read or listen to the book. Don't even bother to see the movie.
I mean, there were people that liked them. I mean, it all depends on your taste. What I will say about the movie is the acting is great. The two actresses, Sophie and I think Sophia, they do a terrific job. The costumes are good. I liked the set designs. I just think, as I've said before, I sound like a broken record, it would have benefited from being a mini-series, not a film. Also, the relationship between Agatha and Tedros. I know fairy tales talk about insta-love, but in the books, it's a gradual process. Because Agatha has her preconceived notions of Tedros, Tedros has them of Agatha, but slowly over the course of the book, they overcome those prejudices and they develop a genuine connection.
Yeah, and
which
I also
in the film
think,
is like there's like, it makes no sense.
Right. I also think, too, that because in the book, Agatha herself perceives herself as being, quote unquote, ugly.
Yes.
And so when she's brought to the School of Good, she doesn't believe it of herself to be beautiful.
Exactly.
So that's also a barrier that she would need to overcome.
Yeah, and also when the other students see her, they honestly think, like, what is she doing here?
Yeah.
Even though she proves to the contrary that she has very much all the qualifications to be a princess because of her appearance, because of her attitude, she's almost like a conundrum for everyone else. It's like, what is she doing here?
Yeah.
You know, but both Agatha and Sophie are assured that the school never makes a mistake.
Right.
You know, And the interesting thing is that the ending of the first book has consequences that you later learn in the second book.
I like when books do that, though.
So balance has to be maintained for a reason. And Agatha and Sophie, more so Agatha, because Sophie is still very much self-centered. That much hasn't changed. Agatha realizes when they get back that something isn't right.
Yeah.
And they have to correct it. So overall, like, give it a watch. Don't give it a watch. If you're the type, like, and I understand that when you go from a book to a film medium, not everything can be kept. But like I said, I think this would have been a great miniseries, and you could have flushed out some of these important elements.
Yeah,
because they are important. These aren't like side characters that everyone loves, and they should be in. Like, these are important characters, important elements of the story, which were not really developed or given the attention they deserved.
Right, and I feel like in previous discussions that we've had on our other podcasts, the Caffeinated Librarians, where we talk about, do we think that the fantasy genre has been sidelined to TV series or what have you, and whether or not that's good or bad. At this point, what I'm feeling and thinking is that the fantasy genre has been moved to the TV, the series adaptation, and I think that's it's better for it because you can build up your world and you can say all of like the details that need to be put in there for a really great fantasy epic to succeed.
Yeah. And I mean, I would definitely give, I'm going to try to revisit the series because I think it's worth revisiting. It is a very popular series, and like I said, we have it in our library. It is available on Hoopla. And I just think there was potential. I mean, I don't know if ultimately they're going to do the sequel. I guess Netflix will have to see. I mean, it didn't get a very positive review from critics. Not that critics are the end-all, be-all, but,
Right.
Who knows? We might get shocked and they do the second one. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments if you are a fan of the books and you've seen the movie. Like, what are your thoughts? What did you like? What didn't you like? What are you hoping, if this is given a chance for the sequel, what they will do with the second film? And we'll see you next time. Bye everyone.